Welcome back to another Djinn diary. Anyone out there having a rough month or terrible year? Last night my girlfriend was driving home and the highway was closing lane for constructions. As cars were slowing down to merge, the car behind her did not slow down and hit her from the back, causing a domino effect to the car in front. Thankfully she is okay, but my concerns is the lag effect. The car is totaled and it was the only car we have for transportation. It is spooky season, so I'll be sharing a lot of Halloween stories. This is part 2 of the Halloween series. Story 1. My friend claimed to be a witch and tried to kill her parents. In 2016, when my sister and I first moved into a new apartment complex with our mom, we didn't know the chaos that awaited us. Over the next few months, strange and unsettling events occurred, leading us to call it the apartment complex from hell. During this time, we were still caught up in the hoverboard craze and often rode them around. That's how we met Savannah, a girl our age who lived in the same building. She asked to hang out, and we agreed, excited at the prospect of making a new friend. One evening, we hung out at a small park outside the complex. It got dark, and we started telling ghost stories. Savannah seemed really into the paranormal, which surprised us since we liked spooky stuff too, though I didn't actually believe in it, and still don't. On our way back, a hallway light flickered, and I jokingly said it was a spirit trying to communicate. Savannah made up a system where 1 flash meant yes and 2 meant no. We played along, thinking it was just innocent fun. The next day, she came running up to us excitedly. She claimed that the spirit from the previous night had told her its name was Kieran, meaning light, which apparently made everything click for her. When we asked how she knew, she explained that she had gone back to talk to the spirit alone later that night. That's when we started to suspect she actually believed in all of this. We remembered a Ouija board our aunt had given us as a joke the year before and figured Savannah would love it. She did, immediately suggesting we use it to talk to Kieran. We sat down in the hallway between the apartments and placed our hands on the board. At first, it spelled out random letters, but soon Savannah was directing questions specifically to Kieran. It was obvious she was moving the planchette, and we called her out on it. She got defensive, insisting it wasn't her. To prove her point, she removed her hand from the planchette, which stopped moving. Still, she stuck to her story. Over the next few weeks, we mostly did normal things with her. But the talk of ghosts and Ouija boards didn't stop. Eventually, we gave in and played with the board again, and this time a new ghost appeared, Evan. We were sure Savannah was making it all up but let her continue out of curiosity. According to her, Evan was a demon trapped by a stronger demon, Kieran. She claimed Evan would protect us from Kieran, especially her. Then her parents called her inside, and conveniently, Evan left too. A few days passed, and Savannah dropped another bombshell: she had a boyfriend. When she told us his name was Evan, we were shocked. She explained that while sleeping over at another friend's house, Evan had tugged off her shorts and later visited her in a dream, asking her out. She said yes. Knowing she'd invented Evan, we were completely baffled but didn't bring up the demon stuff again. Savannah became increasingly possessive of us, bombarding us with texts if she saw us with other friends. She lived on the ground floor, constantly watching for us to come outside. Though we didn't know much about her home life, she often talked about running away and had scars on her wrists. Despite feeling uneasy, we still hung out with her, worried about her well-being. But things got stranger when she began claiming Evan was holding her hand or kissing her cheek. One day, out of boredom, we decided to prank her. I texted my mom, asking her to call my phone from a blocked number and play creepy sounds. Savannah loved it, especially when my mom played a ghostly soundtrack from a horror movie. She even believed that a banana my mom threw from the balcony was a sign that Kieran was gaining power. We were about to reveal the prank when her mom called her inside again. The following day, I admitted that the whole thing had been a prank. Savannah refused to believe it, insisting the events were real. After hearing from a friend that yellow objects, like the banana, were a sign of the devil, Savannah fixated on the idea that the devil was hunting her. For a while, things returned to normal until a new girl, Autumn, moved in. She and Savannah instantly bonded over their shared struggles with depression. Autumn had a troubled past, including time spent in psychiatric facilities and violent behavior toward others. She also claimed to hear demons, which reignited Savannah's obsession with the paranormal. Savannah now claimed Evan was her ghost brother, not her boyfriend, and that she was engaged to another demon named Jacob. She even showed us a ring to prove it. Over the next few weeks, Savannah and Autumn engaged in a bizarre competition to see who was more involved with the supernatural. They compared self-harm scars and talked about sneaking out at night. Savannah even drew a giant pentagram in the parking lot, which her parents discovered. She blamed Autumn for it, but the pentagram was soon covered by fresh asphalt when the lot was repaved. At this point, Savannah started saying her friend had found Jacob's body and was going to return his spirit to it. She also claimed this friend was teaching her witchcraft. We distanced ourselves from her, but Savannah would still ask us to help with things like summoning a familiar. She began referring to herself as a fire witch and started dressing in all black with dramatic makeup. Cops started showing up at her house, and we knew things were getting out of control. Although we tried avoiding both Savannah and Autumn, they grew more hostile, sending angry messages if they saw us with other friends. They even pretended to be possessed in the parking lot one day. Autumn cut off all her hair and claimed she had tried to kill her teacher. Savannah, on the other hand, bragged about wanting to commit violent acts and told us she'd once wished for our hoverboards to explode when she first saw us. One day, police officers from the Juvenile Justice Department showed up at Savannah's house. Her mom pulled us aside to explain that Savannah had once tried to hire someone online to kill her parents. Court papers we found later confirmed this. Savannah had been on probation for years, but we never knew the full story until then. Despite everything, Savannah continued trying to hang out with us. She even invited herself to our house for a sleepover, but we avoided her as much as possible. Eventually, things quieted down when Autumn moved out, and Savannah's family followed shortly after. We later heard that Savannah had started doing service hours at a horse stable and graduated from high school. I genuinely hope she found some peace and stability. Autumn contacted my sister a few months ago, asking for help to lie to her mom, and we saw her with a much older guy. Thankfully, we've moved since then. Our new place is peaceful and quiet, and I hope it stays that way. If you enjoy Halloween stories, stick around. I will be sharing only Halloween stories until the end of October. And if you have made it this far, hit the likes. Story 2. The creep who got into my car. This happened when I was 21 and living downtown with my boyfriend. We had just discovered that my boyfriend, whom I had been with for nearly 4 years, had been cheating on me. That night, we were invited to a Halloween party. Initially, we both declined, but after learning about the cheating, I decided I was going, and he could stay home. We were in the process of breaking up and dividing our assets. Now, this breakup is important because of my mental state at the time. We lived in a sketchy part of downtown, one of those brand new apartments in a rough area situations. Normally, I'm the type to keep the windows up and the doors locked until I've left the immediate area, but my mind was understandably elsewhere, and I had both the driver and passenger windows down to smoke a cigarette. At the first red light I came to, I was still in the shady part of town. I was the first car at the light, and I had a clear view of a guy in his 20s crossing in front of me. As he crosses the street, he looks over and makes eye contact with me. At that point, I was flicking ash from my cigarette out the window and may have given him a polite head nod. I honestly can't remember. Next thing I know, he speeds up and walks over to my open passenger window. He leans into my car and asks if he can have a light. When I'm flustered, I tend to be polite, so without thinking much, I handed him my lighter. I was fully prepared to just drive off when the light turned green and let him keep it. But instead of taking the lighter, he reaches into my car and lets himself in, like we were old friends. The light turns green, and I grab my purse, wedging it between my left leg and the driver's side door. For some reason, my first thought was that he might try to rob me, not the other, darker possibility. He thanks me for the ride and, as I slowly pull away, since there were cars behind me, I ask him why he got into my car. He says he could tell I wanted to give him a ride, then starts into some obviously made-up story about his girlfriend breaking up with him and leaving him stranded downtown. I told him I'd take him to the nearest gas station since I needed gas. I didn't, it was just the closest, well-lit place with people around. The gas station was only about 6 blocks away, but it felt like the longest 6 blocks of my life. He tells me I'm pretty and then asks for money so he can get a cab home. Like an idiot, I offer him the $4 in quarters I keep for parking meters. By this point, I was just desperate for him to stop talking and leave me alone. Instead of taking the money, he starts tossing the quarters, one by one, down the front of my shirt. WTF. I ask him to stop, but he just laughs. Then I see it, the gas station. I pull in and tell him we both need to get out so I can pump gas. He hesitates for a second but finally gets out. I've never locked my doors so fast in my life. I walk into the store, telling him I need to prepay, but instead, I find a group of college kids. It was Halloween weekend, so there were plenty of people in costumes, and explain the situation. While I'm talking to them, one of the guys in the group comes in and tells his friends that the creep outside was claiming that I was his girlfriend and that I'd accidentally driven away with my purse on top of the car. Thankfully, the group of college kids went outside, confronted him, and got him to leave. They even stayed with me until I got back into my car and safely drove away. I have no idea what his intentions were, but I was terrified of what could have happened. Story 3. No, you may not bless us or our house. I had just moved out of my parents' house and into a new place with my wealthy girlfriend, Brittany. We were both young, freshly out of high school, and eager to experience freedom. We found a great 2-story house at a very low price in a nice part of the city, which was convenient for Brittany's job at her father's office. In hindsight, the price seemed too good to be true, but we jumped at the opportunity. As we moved in, we were quickly greeted by our middle-aged neighbor, Gracie. She was eager to know all about us. I remember her disheveled brown hair and drab, colorless clothes that made me feel like I was walking into a job interview. Gracie offered to bring over some pastries for dinner, but since we had plans to eat out, we politely promised another time. I wish we hadn't. The next day, Brittany and I were working in the living room when there was a knock at the door. It was Gracie, carrying several small boxes of pastries. Before I could react, she walked straight to the kitchen, insisting we have dinner together. I wasn't thrilled, but Brittany reassured me that she meant well. We made sandwiches and sat down at the cluttered kitchen table, surrounded by unpacked boxes. Gracie didn't seem to mind the mess, asking question after question. Soon, she shifted the conversation to her church, explaining how she'd attended for decades. The way she spoke, almost as if she were delivering a sermon, was a bit unsettling. Gracie eventually invited us to her church the following Sunday, slyly mentioning how handsome the choir boys were. Brittany responded with a joke about hoping the choir girls were just as attractive, which made Gracie's smile freeze. She quickly collected her empty boxes and headed to the door. Offended, she muttered, "Oh. I see." As she left, I called out her name. She spun around, glaring at me, and declared, "This house is damned." She smashed one of the glass boxes on the floor and stormed off, screaming Bible verses as she walked away. Brittany found the whole thing hilarious, but I didn't. 2 days in, and our neighbor already hated us. 2 months later, as I was putting up Halloween decorations, I heard Gracie's voice behind me. Dressed all in black, she said, "It's not too late, you know. The Lord will forgive you and your friend, but you must listen." Trying to be polite, I asked her what she wanted. She insisted that she needed to bless our house and put us on a strict religious regimen. I calmly declined, suggesting non-religious ways to make things right, but she wouldn't hear it. She threw a small Bible at me, telling me to read it, and stormed off. The next morning, we were awoken by loud noises in the yard. Brittany went to check and found Gracie tearing down our decorations. Pumpkins were smashed, skeletons scattered, and streamers shredded. Gracie demanded to know if I had read the Bible, but before I could respond, Brittany shouted at her to leave or she'd call the police. Gracie ran back to her house, and I realized we had a serious problem. After that, Gracie started leaving Bibles on our doorstep every night and occasionally stood outside, preaching. Brittany often chased her away, but it made me uneasy. We went to the police, but they didn't seem to take the situation seriously. We spent many nights in fears, realizing that this wasn't the dream life we had envisioned. Things escalated in December when Gracie tried to bless our house again. She pushed past me while I was shoveling the garden, determined to enter. Brittany stopped her, and I called the police. Gracie, enraged, grabbed the shovel and began smashing our windows. She only managed to break a few before Brittany took the shovel away, forcing her to flee. Realizing the situation wouldn't improve, we decided to move in with Brittany's family while we searched for a new place. Although we could have stayed and fought, we didn't want to risk further escalation. By the end of December, we were gone, but on our final drive away from the house, I saw Gracie through her window. She was speaking, but I couldn't make out the words. Was it another verse? A death threat? Maybe a prayer for forgiveness? I'll never know, but there's one thing I'm certain of: I never wanted to experience it again.